USF anthropologists are teaming up with forensic artists from around the country to try to solve 20 cold cases. The cases involve missing and unidentified people who are apparently victims of crime. Investigators are taking remains and descriptions and turning them into three-dimensional recreations. University Beat's Mark Schreiner joined the artists and scientists in the lab and at a special event unveiling their work.
Forensic artists at a recent workshop hosted by the University of South Florida wrapped up a week of work by presenting their creations, 14 clay busts of unidentified victims in cold cases, to local law enforcement. But in the middle of their presentation, a woman looking at one of the works at the rear of a downtown Tampa conference room broke down sobbing, sure that the face staring back at her was that of her sister, some 38 years after she went missing. More on that in a moment. First, the circumstances that brought her there. For the second year, the Florida Institute of Forensic Anthropology and Applied Science at USF hosted a week-long workshop called The Art of Forensics. USF forensic anthropologist Erin Kimmerly directs the institute.
Everything we do in academia, especially at USF, is about service, education, and research. It's really infused. We don't really separate those.
She and her team looked through hundreds of cases in their files and picked out 20 from around Florida and 4 other states, dating from 1970 through earlier this year.
14 amazing artists came from all over the United States, Canada, and Europe, so some of them traveled really far to be here. They share this passion and are volunteering their time, learning new skills and honing them, but also really making an invaluable contribution.
Joe Mullins of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children led the workshop. He says the process starts with remains of victims' skulls. Scans are made and three-dimensional replicas are created, giving the artists the base for their clay recreations. Other evidence is limited.
The basic information you get from the forensic anthropologist is, age range, male or female, ancestry, and those that have, hair or clothing that were found with the remains. That's really it.
The artists then had 72 hours to create the clay busts.
This could be the last ditch effort for these people to get their names back.
The forensic artist's work, turning a skeletal remain into a possibly recognizable face, is truly the combination of science and art.
The faces are ultimately based on the anatomy. We don't take a lot of creative license, but you have to have those artistic abilities and skills to work with clay, to work in Photoshop and drawing in order to put a face on that anatomy. And so it's a great mix.
For freelance forensic artist Maggie Florence, the challenge is knowing when to stop working on a recreation.
We're all perfectionists. We don't want to ever be done. And Joe says it perfectly: when you see a face staring back at you, you know.
Florence attended the workshop last year, working on the case of a woman whose remains were found in a field in Davenport earlier in 2015.
We had very limited clothing other than a pink hooded sweatshirt that appeared to be a female sweatshirt. We had nothing else. It was in an open field. There were no houses near, there were no witnesses. We had absolutely nothing but the bones.
A DNA sample taken from the remains and entered into a national database identified the woman as 33-year-old Jessica Rousseau from Central Florida. Florence said she was at first happy that her work played a part in the identification.
If I can be so bold as to say, I feel like I had to go through my own short grieving process for her because I had been connected to her for only a short time. Nothing compared to what the family and friends would go through. But I did hold a connection to her, and I never stopped thinking about her after I left Florida last year.
The emotional impact of the work, as well as its ability to help, was again evident at the presentation when Sheila Williams broke down at the possible conclusion of an almost 40-year-old mystery. Tampa Police Detective Scott Bullard had invited Williams and her sister, Sharon Scott, to view the busts, thinking one of them might be that of their sister, Brenda Joyce Williams, who disappeared in 1978.
So it's my understanding she got here today and she looked at the bust and saw some resemblances between our Jane Doe that was discovered in 1985 and her sister, and she believes that the person we discovered may be her sister.
Bullard hopes that a DNA sample from the remains can be compared with that of the sisters so they can know for sure if it's Williams.
It's going to be a definitive, it's either going to tell us whether or not it is or is not a family relation.
Mullins says that there's no such thing as closure for a family in a case like this. However, there may at least be an answer.
It's like, it's not, you can't close, it's never going to close the chapter on these unidentified victims' lives. All, that's the best we can hope for is we want to provide answers. We want to know, like, what happened. It's like, and now they know, they have answers to those questions. They've been haunting them. They're frozen in uncertainty for decades. And that's the ultimate goal of this class is answer those questions and give these victims their identity back.
For University Beat, I'm Mark Schreiner.